Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 844B and today's date is December 16th, 2015, and the title of the episode is U.S. Government and Central Bankers Have Now Indicated World War III is on Track. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now we realize that the President, Congress, they're being controlled by corporations, central bankers, foreign governments. They're not being controlled by the people. They could care less about the people. And we're starting to see that all of this is true because when we look at the White House and who has come to visit Obama, we see that CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, they have kept about, 1,000 appointments with him. Of the hundreds and thousands of appointments listed, Obama himself was present at about half of them. Now, this is CEOs visiting the White House. So when we look at this, the CEOs are coming to the White House. They've become allies in advocating for immigration, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the reauthorization for the Export-Import Bank. And when we look, we see which companies they are, where they visited many, many times. Honeywell, Dow Chemical, General Electric, Aetna, Boeing, IBM, AT&T, Goldman Sachs, American Express, and so on. Many, many visits. And this tells you that they are continually moving and going in there to push agendas. Now, Obama is doing whatever he possibly can to get weapons away from the people. And they tried many different false flags. A lot of these false flags are basically being shown as hoaxes, showing that the government is actually orchestrating the entire event for their agenda. And every time Obama comes out and does one of these mass shootings, gun sales go up. So what does he do? Well, he's going to go after the gun manufacturers. He's going after Smith & Wesson. Basically, what they've done is they sent federal regulators to investigate whether the gun manufacturer, Smith & Wesson, had made adequate disclosures in its financial statements. Because you have to remember, they're showing an increase in sales. Stocks are going up. So what they're doing is they're sicking the SEC on them, and they're going to go through everything. And we know that they're going to find something or tell them they didn't have something which no one knew about because they just made it up as they went along in the investigation. Because we know how well the SEC works. Look at all the corruption that happened all around us with the banking system, the problem with Corzine, where a lot of people lost their wealth, Madoff. I mean, they had no clue what was going on. But here we have the SEC going in and basically going into a gun manufacturer. This is not coincidence. This is being done on purpose. Now, out in Montenegro, we know that NATO issued a formal invitation for the former Republic of Montenegro. And they did this on December 2nd. And Montenegro accepted the following day. Now, of course, this makes Russia very, very nervous. But what happened was there were protests and people out on the streets saying, no, we don't want this. And 5,000 people gathered on the streets to oppose the decision. And Russia is saying, well, wait a minute. Let's hear from the people and let them decide if they want to have their country join NATO. Because as the U.S. always says, let the people have freedom, democracy to choose their own path. Well, the U.S. only says this when they basically do a regime change and they put in a puppet government. And then after the puppet government is there, they don't want democracy. They don't want freedom. They don't want the people to decide. This is why they don't want the people of Syria to really decide. Because they're not controlling them. In Ukraine, they had the coup d'etat. They removed the elected government. In Syria, they're having a problem with this. And if they let the people in Syria vote, they know which way it's going to go. And it's not going to be in the United States' favor. Now, we see the war drums are getting louder and louder in Ukraine. Right now, Yatsenyuk has decided to suspend trade with Crimea in the next 30 days, which would bring us into January. The Minsk II ceasefire agreement expires the end of December. Kiev has not adhered to the agreement. So basically what they're doing, they're getting prepared. They're cutting off trade already. So Putin signs a decree suspending free trade with Ukraine starting January. And we can see this is going back and forth. But what's very interesting about all this, as we know, they've been bringing military assets up to the contact line in the southeastern area and in Crimea. But the United States, they just issued a warning to all U.S. citizens to basically defer all travel to Crimea and the eastern regions of Donetsk and Lugansk. Not Kiev. Just those areas. And recommends those U.S. citizens currently living in or visiting these regions to leave immediately. And they're saying this supersedes the warning that they had back in July 16th of this year when they tried to push that offensive and it didn't work out. So right now, we have warnings in Ukraine, which were just issued. They're getting prepared. They're getting ready. Now, out in Libya, we understand the UN, the United States, Italy, France, they were all hoping that the elected government and the puppet government would sign a deal which would unify the governments. But again, we had a representative that was thrown out of the elected government, which was trying to represent the elected government. And we can see at this point in time that there is no deal. The deal completely fell apart. The leaders of Libya's rival parliaments rejected a UN peace deal a day before moderates from both sides were due to sign it. So the whole deal is completely off. And what's very interesting about all this, once again, is David Cameron is basically thinking about whether to extend the bombing of the Islamic State to Libya after the failure of the agreement in Rome. So France flew reconnaissance missions. France is saying that the Islamic State is moving inland to get more oil fields. And the unity government deal completely fell apart. England, with France, are looking to go in and bomb the Islamic State. The U.S. is saying, yes, this is something we should do. But we have to be very careful that we don't hit civilians or cause problems in Libya. They don't care about that. They're going into Libya. They tried another deal. It didn't work. They want the puppet government in power. They have their proxy army already there. They're going to try to capture the oil fields. England, France, most likely Egypt, the other coalition forces, the U.S., are going to assist with bombing. We're going to see the war break out in Libya. Now, Turkey, basically is being reported for abusing refugees. And this is coming from the Amnesty International group. The Turkish government has been rounding up refugees and transporting them to detention centers where they are abused and mistreated. They've documented the arbitrary detention of some of the most vulnerable people on Turkish soil. And the organization went on to confirm that EU officials in Turkey confirmed that 6 EU-funded open reception centers outlined in October are actually detention centers. And the EU is out there saying they are shocked that they're using EU money to fund an unlawful detention type of center. Well, Turkey doesn't have a great human rights record. Neither does Saudi Arabia, neither does Qatar, neither does any of these countries that the U.S. does business with. And I don't think anyone's really surprised about this. Now, Spain is making a move to keep Patriot missiles in Turkey. The Spanish Ministry of Defense announced that it would not follow suit and instead renew the military contracts that will keep these SAM units in Turkey. Spain indicated earlier this year that it would reconsider its missile placement in Turkey, and they just went ahead and did that. Italy is going to be sending another 450 troops into Iraq. They already have about 750 troops there, and they're bringing them into Iraq to basically defend the Mosul Dam. Now, we all seen in past reports and pictures all over the internet strange Ford trucks, and especially the one that says Mark Plumbing in the hands of the Islamic State. And basically, he decided to sue because his truck with his name, his number, was seen in Syria, in Iraq, with basically a machine gun, an anti-aircraft gun, mounted in the bed of the truck. And a Texan by the name of Mark Oberholzer is suing the Texas Ford dealership, Charlie Thomas Gord, for more than $1 million in financial losses and damages to his company's reputation. Because as soon as people saw this, they thought he was part of the Islamic State. And basically, all he wanted to do was upgrade his truck to a newer truck. They didn't know, he didn't realize they were going to take his truck, not remove his name or number on it, and basically auction it off to Turkey. And this is exactly what happened. According to a Carfax vehicle history report, the vehicle was listed as a dealer vehicle sold at Texas Auto Auction on November 11th, 2013. On December 18th, 2013, the vehicle was exported from Houston, Texas, and imported to Mersin, Turkey. And Mersin is right near the border of Syria. And guess what? And it basically went into the hands of the Islamic State. We see the Toyota trucks that the Islamic State uses. All of this is being brought over from the United States into this area. The Toyota trucks are basically done by the U.S. government. Other trucks are being sold, and of course they're going to have intermediaries buying these trucks, so you can't trace who is actually purchasing. But that what we saw yesterday and what we talked about yesterday were these hackers basically tracing back the propaganda from the Islamic State, which originated in the UK. So we can see that this is all governmental based. We can see the government is controlling all of this, not just the US government, UK government, Israel, the coalition forces, because their main objective is to have Assad removed. Right now, Syrian warplanes, they pounded the Islamic State supply routes. They destroyed basically the entire area around Aleppo, and they destroyed strongholds in Aleppo. And we know at this point that the main goal of the United States is to remove Assad. Now, John Kerry has come out And he is agreeing with Putin and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that Assad will stay in power. They do not want him removed. Well, of course, this is lip service. We've seen this before, where Putin brokered a deal with chemical weapons and saying, this is all you want from Assad. You just want the chemical weapons gone, and that's all you're going to actually end up doing. And they said, yes, that's all we want. And then we had the Geneva I, the Geneva II talks, and the only thing on the United States' agenda was to have Assad step down. Right now, the United States is backed into a corner. Right now, the Islamic State is being destroyed. They're airlifting their proxy army out of Syria. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the United States joins in and pretends to go after the Islamic State, and they continually airlift them all out of there, because they have to make it look like they're working with Russia. But we have to remember, in the background of all of this, they're preparing a major army. They're preparing another tactic. They're getting ready to make an additional move. So what we hear today most likely is a lie. Because think about it. They spent, 6 years? 5 years? I should say 5 years right now of trying to remove Assad, convincing the world he's a dictator, he kills his own people, he gasses his own people, he tortures his own people. They paid billions of dollars for the Free Syrian Army, billions of dollars to train the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. They sent in billions of dollars of military assets into Syria. And they're just going to agree with Russia and the UN and say, yeah, Assad can stay. What would be the point of all of this? Because if Assad stays, that means he has control of his country once again. If he has control of his country once again, there's no pipeline. There's no putting the central bank inside of Syria. There's no way of putting the dollar on their natural resources. And there's no way they're going to get to Iran. Because they were hoping with this great war, which is still coming, Iran would join in the fight. By joining in the fight, they have access to go after Iran. So at this point, we can see that this is lip service. We need to look at their actions. Let's see what the next step is. And the next step is going to be an event to change everything. This is what's happening right now. Now, John McAfee, he is out there and he says the West is living in a doomsday machine of our own design. And it's only a matter of time before our weapons and technology are turned against us. What is he talking about? He's talking about how the government has left their networks completely open to hacking. He says in a modern world, which has the power grid, nuclear power stations, planes, cars, and the financial infrastructure all tied in through networking, are all just sitting there waiting for a major cyber attack. The only problem with this whole entire scenario is that this attack most likely will start from the inside. And I'm talking about a false flag where the government of the United States makes it look like it's coming from another country or another group. Now, maybe later on, once the war gets started, of course, the other nations will hit our infrastructure, will hit our financial infrastructure. So he is right on that side. But when this starts out, it's going to come from the inside. They've been preparing for this. They've been getting ready for this, because this is how they're going to take all eyes off of them when this economy comes crumbling down. Now, the FBI, James Comey, is out there letting us know that the Islamic State terrorists is a different sort of threat than Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is basically an all-out, one big boom type of terror organization. The Islamic State, they like to spread out their attacks in smaller areas, and they do it all at once. And this fits into what we've been saying for quite a while, that they've been preparing for some type of an event across the country where it will be a dirty nuke, where it will be either a chemical or biological weapon, and it will happen in multiple locations. He's also saying that these terrorists are using encryption once again, saying that this encryption allows the terrorists to go dark, and law enforcement cannot trace them whatsoever. And he says encryption is at the center of terrorist tradecraft. Well, they're not going on their iPhones, Facebook, Twitter, and writing their plans down and passing them back and forth. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Any type of advanced actor, like they're trying to convince us that ISIS is, which we know is the proxy army of the United States government central bankers, but if we go by their official story, they will have their own devices, their own encryption. Just like in the olden days when people used to make up ciphers because it was personal to them. They're not going to use the off-the-shelf encryption. It wouldn't make any sense because they don't know if someone has the method or key. So his argument is completely ridiculous. What he's really saying is that he wants to spy on every American. And that's what they've been pushing all along. And this is why each and every one needs to continually reinforce your rights any way you possibly can. With encryption, you can use encrypted email, you can use Start Page, you can use blockitpocket.com. That's those sleeves that you can drop your credit card in, your license into, your iPhone, your iPad. It blocks the signal. You can use Pi, which is on my site. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. It's an open source code. I did not write it, someone else did, and they allowed me to post it on the website. And there's many different methods of protecting yourself. And we all need to continually push our rights to show the government that we are standing by them. Freedom of speech, First Amendment, Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, the Fourth Amendment, you cannot search us, you cannot spy on us, and so on. We can never stop doing that, because once we do, the government thinks they have the right to walk over us and say, well, you're not using your rights, we can take them away, which is, again, fake, phony, and false, but a lot of people believe this. We need to continually show that, yes, these are our rights, and you cannot do any of this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.